Miss Carol, I am doing well. I'm doing well under the circumstances. I've cried every day for the last 10 days or so. Feels like post 9/11 for me, but I'm here.
You're here.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Like I said, I'd love to help. So I'm staying busy with everything that's going on right now, with not only going on in Jamaica, but just the economy in general. The furloughs and the everything else that's going on has pushed a lot of brides my direction. So,
That's right.
and
Yes.
I'm willing if you have a need and you can't afford your gown, all you have to do is come see me and I will give you the dress of your dreams.
I love that concept. And it's an angle of assistance that I never even imagined when this whole thing happened with Jamaica. That, you know what, there were people planning to get married. There are
Yes,
people who might have lost their wedding dresses.
definitely.
So, whereas a wedding might not be their primary, their focus right now, I'm sure at some point they'll revisit that and they'll be glad to have a gown donated from, I'm sorry, I have to keep looking, the
Fairy Godmother's Closet.
the fairy godmother's closet. Thank you.
I'm
Uh,
Cummings' fairy godmother.
Fairy, you're and I like the fact that you say it doesn't even have to be just Jamaica. If there's somebody
No.
listening right now in Atlanta, we're also on the air in New York, South Florida, uh, and this show will also be broadcast at a later date in West London. So
Wow.
there are a lot of people around the world who are hearing this and watching this right now. Canada, Toronto, and so it would just be a matter of getting it to the person. So this just makes it even broader, right? Now, you said there's a story behind what you do, and I just can't wait to hear it. What drove you? Where did the inspiration come from? For you, I see the beautiful gowns on the rack behind you. Yep. I made sure I accented your picture so they can see it. Now,
I can go over a little bit so you can see some more. Yeah, they're
yeah,
gifts. They're gifts from God.
it, it's a gift from God.
They're gifts from God. Every one of them show up on my front porch, and we call them God deliveries. And they come from all over the world, all over everywhere, and they're gifts from God.
So when you say they show up on your porch, do you not know where they come from sometimes?
Nope. Sometimes
Really?
they not until I see the shipping label on the box do I know where they come from. And they've come from New York, they've come from Boston, they've come from San Francisco, they've come from Los Angeles, they've come from Chicago, they all over, and they just show up on my front porch.
Let me be nosy and ask you, so what's your collection looking like?
Large,
I can
large,
imagine.
yes.
You,
But
scores of them.
we did 100 brides last year.
What?
So
Wow.
yeah, in 2024, we did 100 brides, and this year it looks like we're going to do just about the same.
That's
So
at least two per week, an average.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And God says there's a gown here for every girl. She just has to come to me to get it. And so, and it works that way. Before they even come through the door, I talk to them on the phone. And by the time they get here, I seem to know what dress belongs to them. I get this feeling, and I'll pull two or three, and I'll be doggone if they don't go out with one of the two or three that I've chosen. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Exciting stuff. Well, I
yeah,
truly appreciate you thinking of helping our brides to be in Jamaica
yeah.
because, like I said, I never even thought of that. But the most amazing thing that could possibly happen um, is that somebody from their vantage point is looking at the same disaster but thinking so differently. You know, I have one viewer, Maxine, says it's an amazing idea, a wedding dress. Wow. And then, hi, Shelly Ann. Shelly Ann says, love it. This is such a niche need. you know?
It is. It is. And it happened to me all of a sudden. I did not ask for this. I was living in Oregon at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to say that I was playing left field. I was not a church person. I was way out in left field. This wasn't even in my radar. But I got a call one night, and the voice on the phone says, "God told me to call you. He wants me to bless you beyond um, your wildest dreams." And I kind of stood there for a minute and I laughed at him and said, "What?" And she repeated it. "God told me to call you, and he wants to bless you." And I said, "Yeah, right. And why me?" It was out of my mouth. And she said, "It's what he wants." And I said, "You have a wrong
I
number."
know, right?
You have a girl, you have a real wrong number. And she said, "No, I don't." And she referred me to an address and asked me to go there the next day. And of course, my husband's saying, I don't
Right.
think so. Nuh-uh. But I did. And when I got there, there was just, it was at a church, and there was just all these black plastic trash bags filled with stuff. And the lady there said that they were wedding gowns, but I asked how old, what condition, and she couldn't tell me anything. She said my job was to believe and to trust. And I said, "I don't want your trash. I'm sorry, I can't deal with this." And she says, "No, all you have to do is believe." So I went home and took pictures and went home and showed him. And we're standing in the middle of the living room, and he says, "Carol, we live on a farm." He says, "We don't have room for wedding dresses here." Well, I mean, you can't put them in my barn. The cows aren't going to appreciate that. And I'm not watching football through crinoline in the house. So we don't have room for something like this. And about that time, the phone rang in my hand, and a voice on the other end of the phone says, "You have room. You just don't know it yet."
Wow.
And they hung up. And we're standing there looking at each other saying, uh, what was that?
I know.
And so a couple of days later, I was standing there doing dishes, and I looked out across the driveway, and we lived in a house that was built in 1920. And there was an old livery barn for horse and carriage and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we don't have a horse and carriage, you know? So we were standing there looking, it was just full of junk. And I thought, no, no, go tearing out there with a measuring tape. There was almost 600 to 700 square feet out there.
Wow.
And I said, "Honey," but it was full of junk. Well, it took
Right.
us three months to get rid of the junk. We did it. Um, but it had my boys came in, and the first thing they did is said, "What are you doing?" And I told them, and he picked up the broom and he stuck it through the ceiling, and he said, "Mom, see that? There's no insulation." And then he picked up a hammer and went down my walls, and I just come and glued, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Mom, there's no insulation in these walls either. It's going to be too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. Mom, this is not going to work." And I just sat there and cried. I mean, I just spent months getting rid of this stuff. But he says, "Tell you what, his brother and he says, Brian and I will take care of it. We'll do it for you." So they completely redid the whole place, and it was beautiful when it was done.
Oh,
And I
what
went
a
to get my
blessing.
dresses, and um, they weren't there. It was empty. And I got a call, and I said, "I'm ready. Where's the gowns?" And she says, "Oh, I should have called you. There's been a slight change in plans." And I said, "Huh? I just spent $7,000 on this room."
Wow.
And she said, "The ladies from the church here saw that, and they're going to open a boutique." So I gave them all to them.
Uh oh.
So, yeah. And I was devastated. I spent $7,000 on this room, and she gave them away. And so I came home in tears. The first thing Tom said to me was, "You got scammed, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I got scammed." He
Wow.
said, "Tell you what," he said, "go in, get on Marketplace, find some racks, and we'll start small, sweetheart. We don't have to start big, we'll start small." Well, we did. I found some racks next town over, next store short. We went next day to pick up some racks, and I had $100. That's all I had. And so I gave it to her, and for one rack. Well, when I got there, there was three. And she said, well, when I took out your rack, these two fell out behind it, and I'm not putting them away. Take them.
Wow.
So she gave me three. Well, we're dismantling all these racks and putting them away. And my husband comes back in and he says, honey, when we got here, was there boxes sitting up on that ledge above us? And I said, no, there's nothing up there. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah, why? I went in and looked, and there was all these boxes were filled with Maggie Satoros and uh, uh, Justin Alexander's and all these wonderful designers. And I looked at him and I said, sweetie, that's her new stock coming in for this lady's um,
Right.
salon. I said, don't worry about it. That's new stock. And I'm drooling over these names, as I'm putting this
Right.
stuff
The
in.
brands.
But each time we came in, there was more boxes going across the thing, and it came down the stairs, down, and then onto the floor. And he come out and he grabbed me by the hoodie, and he says, you got to see this. And he dragged me back inside, and he's standing there and he's pointing at the box. And I looked at it. My name was on top of that box. Now she had no way of knowing. We
Right.
didn't tell her what happened. And I'm sitting there and I thought, no. So I went in and I said, do you have a salesperson named Carol Williams? And she said, no. I said, a stock person? No. Delivery person? No. Anybody in your company? No. And why are my names on this box? All these boxes. She said, well, gee, after you called me for the racks yesterday, she said, I was on my way out to sit in my garden with my Bible. And she said, when I got out there, guess who I had a long talk with? And God told me exactly what had happened to you, and that He had designed a ministry for you, and that you got cheated. And He is not happy. So He's handing you this ministry, and all these new dresses are for you. And I said, what? And she sent me
Wow.
home with like 200 dresses.
What?
Yeah. Now I had no idea what to do with them, but she sent me home with all of these dresses. We brought them home, and I first I said I can't accept this. These are thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gowns. And she said, He told me He would provide for me. The Lord said He would provide for me if I gave these to you. And she says, I have no doubts in my mind. And I finally gave in and brought them home and got them all hung up. And I said, I didn't know what to do with them. I said, am I supposed to sell them? Am I a salon? What am I? What am I? But in the middle of the night, I got woke up. It's just like one of those things that you kind of feel like, hey, you, hey, hello. And I sat up in bed and I heard this voice, and it said, hi, I'm handing you a ministry. I'm giving it to you with love. And it's your job to put these dresses into the hands of women and girls who can't afford a gown of their own. So when they come to me to be married, they're beautiful. And she said they're not to be sold, they're to be given away, and they belong to you to do this with.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there saying, what? You're giving me a ministry? I said, you know who you're talking to? And he said, yes. He says, I know you've done this ministry your whole life. And he said, I followed. You just didn't realize I saw. And I opened retirement homes for seniors for 34 years.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and he watched. And so he handed me this ministry for all these brides. And believe it or not, my very first bride was 90 years old.
What? Gee. A
Yep.
90-year-old bride?
She was 90. She had told me we were sitting around having cocoa at Christmas, and she's a minister's wife. And she said, I married hundreds of brides, but I never got to be a bride. We only had $1. And so we got married in the living room of my pastor, and we had a steak dinner, but that was my wedding. I never got to
Oh.
be a bride. Well, that broke my heart. So I decided I was going to fix that. So I called her daughter and said, "Would you mind?" And she said, "If they'll go along with it." No, not at all. So I took Joy out to find a gown, and I found a gown hanging in a store, and I took it down. And at 90, they can't wear mermaids and fit and flares and all this stuff. They just
Right.
can't. I found this beautiful satin, solid satin with little tiny roses all over it. And I said to the gal, I said, "What about this one?" And she said, "I've never seen that gown before in my life. Where'd you find that?" And I said, "Over there on that rack." She says, "That's not one of our gowns." And I said, "Well, that's where it was." And she went and got it again, no tags or anything on it. She said, "That's not one of our gowns, Carol. I don't know where that's come from." I said, "Well, can I try it on her?" It fit her like a glove.
Mm.
And I said, "Well, you know, um, do you want a veil, Joy?" And she said, "Oh, I'm too old." But I looked up over the door and there was a crown of roses. And I said to the lady, "What about that up there over the door?" She says, "We don't hang anything over the door." And I said, "What's that?" I pointed up over the door in the store. And she took it down. It was a crown of satin roses
Oh my gosh.
that matched the dress. And she'd never seen it before. Put it on her head, and she was beautiful. Now, Louis, her husband, was in his 90s too. He'd been in a wheelchair forever. But the day of the wedding, I invited a few people. As it happens, that their son was president pro tem of George Fox University
Right.
in Oregon. 300 people showed up out of nowhere, and loaves and fishes. Um, the cake showed up, the food
It's one
showed up,
miracle after another.
everything showed up. And
Yes.
when I pushed him to go down the aisle, he stopped me and he says, "Carol, not like this. No." I said, "What's the matter? You change your mind now?" He said, "No." He put the things aside. He stood up and he walked down that aisle and he stood for her. That's the first time I'd seen Louis stand in almost a year. And he stood for her as she came down that aisle.
Wow.
And I married him,
Amazing.
and their children are like the Gaithers. They sing, and they were wonderful, and they set tapes and music for the service, and it was the most beautiful thing you ever saw. And that was my very first bride.
Love it. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Miss Carol Williams of the Fairy Godmother
Godmother's
Closet,
closet.
and they provide free bridal gowns to anyone who presents for
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Yep.
so I'm just so happy to introduce you to the Caribbean audience tonight.
Well, thank you.
Sure, there'll be some Jamaicans wearing this in the next coming months once they get over the immediacy of the needs right now and refocus on getting married again. And would like for you to put out there how we could contact you if we know somebody or wanted to refer a very viable candidate for one of these gowns.
Okay. Well, if you look, I'm on Instagram.
Okay,
Um, and they can check me out on Instagram under Fairy Godmother's Closet. And I'm
Instagram,
also,
Fairy Godmother's Closet. I'm pulling you up
yeah,
right now.
and also on Facebook under Your Fairy Godmother's Closet on Facebook.
Okay.
And you'll look, I'm standing there in a big blue dress that looks like a fairy godmother. You can't miss me.
All right. Good deal.
And they can reach me. I can give a phone number if you'd like. They can reach me at 503
Yes, go ahead.
560 1921.
Thank you. So that's 503 560 1921.
921. They can
Follow her
reach
on
me at that.
Instagram. You can message her directly there. I'm following as we speak. All right. And it's Fairy Godmother's Closet Bridal. That's one of them.
Yeah. And it's williams.carol at,
Williams.carol
uh-huh, at comcast.net.
at Comcast.
.net, and they can reach me that way as well.
Okay. This is truly amazing. I appreciate considering it Okay. Um,
And yeah, and your brides here, if even your brides here in Atlanta that are having trouble because of being furloughed, because of being laid off, and everything else that's going on with this economy these days, have them give me a call. Don't spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a dress when I can take care of that, and then I can also help them plan a wedding that's um, budget conscious.
right. Right.
You know, they can have a beautiful wedding. They just don't have to spend the cost of a house to do it. You know.
There you go. There you go. Amazing. All right. Well, I tell you what, I thank you so much. We'll be in touch. I can't wait to cover a wedding where they learned about you through the Wayne All Show.
And I will keep you posted when I hear from anybody that's referred from the show, and I'll keep you up. I'd like to invite you and your wife to come by and take a look at Fairy Godmother's closet
Will do. We definitely
and
will.
take some pictures so you have something to take with you when you
There you
uh,
go. Sounds like such a
go
plan.
home. And yeah, okay.
Such a blessing, Miss Carol. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
All right. You have a great rest of your evening.
you too.
All
Bye bye.
righty. Take care. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, what a blessing of a story.